Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Honestly, you've already been nicer than most people. Maybe she can start using the mint to make herself some tea to calm her antics down. Being petty's great, but being environmentally conscious on top of it adds a whole new level to this. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I planted some mint. Last year, one of my 40-year-old female partner's 47-year-old male relatives first got sick and then died. While he was in hospital for several months, we regularly dropped by to look after his house, fix the garden, make sure nothing was amiss and such. Now, one of the neighbors is a real consolation prize. As she does not like to garden, she had the garden, front and back of her property she's rented, filled up with gravel. I think it's stupid and ugly, but as long as she's happy, more power to her. In her garden. Said neighbor started pestering my partner and me about things she wanted to change in the relative's garden. Bushes cut off, plants removed, that stuff. She also claimed that the way we were gardening was attracting harmful bugs, which, when I showed them to a friendly biologist, were confirmed to be wood sorrel seeds. Anyway, I talked everything through with her to confirm what needed doing and removed any plants that were threatening to intrude into her garden, ivy, blackberry, etc. The only thing I did not cut was one hazel branch, as it was in the middle of a dry spell. Cutting them's bad for the plant, and we were planning to relocate the bush anyway. I explained this to her and asked if she could wait until spring. She said it was fine and let me get back to gardening. The next time I dropped by, someone had hacked the branch in question off at the widest area near the base, splintering and at a weird angle. To be clear, legally she was allowed to cut anything growing over her property back, and the branch was approximately 10 centimeters across the border. I'm just really annoyed she said it was fine to wait and then hacked at the plant the moment we were not looking. But as my partner's family was worried about the relative, I decided to let it slip and kept taking care of the garden. By now, we've cut and relocated the hazel as promised. There was an empty spot in the middle of the relative's front yard, maybe 6 by 4 feet, and I decided to put some regionally native mint there. In case you don't know, mint is a very useful plant. Insects like it. You can make it into tea. It smells delicious and keeps mosquitoes away. And it's unstoppable. I know it'll spread into the neighbor's yard and mess up her peaceful gravel paradise, but it's all but impossible to get rid of. It spreads along underground root tendrils. My father thinks this is hilarious. Obviously, I got my petty qualities from him. My partner, on the other hand, thinks I may have been unnecessarily mean. The family plans to sell the property, so by the time this problem becomes obvious, we'll be long gone. I've also ordered a bee-friendly mix to freshen up the grass in the backyard, as she complained the grass was too high growing and we had to rake out most of it. Can't sell a house with a bare dirt backyard, right? And our second story. Side with my bullies and threaten me? I made sure you lose your job. I went to a small private school that was part of a network of international schools around the U.S. This network had its own board of education that managed many things across the schools, including the firing and hiring of principals. Our school principal had decided to leave for another school in the middle of 8th grade, and the board director for our state decided to take over as the interim principal until a full-time one could be properly found. Although she was expected to stay as long as a school year or two, many students hated her, as she immediately began lording her position on the board over the other teachers and was incredibly condescending to all the students, even the high school students, and treating us all like we were little kids. She shall be called M for this story. So I'd always had a problem being bullied by a clique of girls in our year ever since we were in 6th grade. They whispered insults to me in class, spread rumors about me, tripped me in the hall, tried to turn the rest of our class against me, and then made fun of me even more for having very few friends. I have Asperger's, which had been undiagnosed at the time, and they took advantage of my more literal thinking to trick me into believing stupid things to get me hurt, and called me a freak for my particular interests and how into them I got. I became incredibly depressed. Towards the end of 8th grade, I decided I'd had enough of these girls, and since I was switching to another more elite school for high school, I felt like even though I was going to be better off than them, it would be proper for me to stand up to these girls once and for all. I didn't have the confidence to go up to them on my own, so I went to a few other girls who I knew this clique had been bullying too to ask if we could all go stand up to them together. So we planned out exactly what we were going to say and went to them during lunch to tell them to leave us alone or we'd all go to M directly and deal with them. Not an hour later, I'm called out of my science class to go down to M's office. She had called all of us girls down. Apparently the bullies had decided to go to M themselves and spin some sob story about how we were bullying them and that they had tried to stand up to us, but we surrounded them and threatened them to keep quiet. M had clearly taken their story in, hook, line, and sinker, and began berating us for bullying those poor girls and telling us that we should be ashamed of ourselves and that we weren't allowed anywhere near them or we'd have our parents called. M even said she was friends with the mother of one of the bullies and that girl had been teased at her old school and didn't deserve such treatment here. She directly asked me what had happened during lunch and clearly didn't like the truth that I was telling because she immediately brushed it off and continued yelling at us, adding that if any of us tried to interrupt her, explain what really happened, she would have us expelled. I stayed quiet because I didn't actually want to be expelled and jeopardize my chance of getting into my new school, but I was now fuming with anger. This anger became fury when I noticed that two of the girls in the clique who'd been allowing us to sit in on this humiliating telling off were smirking at us from behind M's back. Once M let us finally leave, and after I took some time to cry in the bathroom, I went down to the front office to be excused from class for the rest of the day, claiming to be unwell. My mom was called to pick me up, and as soon as I got into the car, I told her everything that had happened. I have a somewhat eidetic memory, so I was able to tell her how the meeting in M's office went nearly word for word, emphasizing the fact that she had threatened us with expulsion for speaking up. My mom was furious and called M personally to give her a piece of her mind. I told my mom the names of all the other girls who'd been humiliated along with me, and my mom then called their parents to tell them what had happened. Many of them called M as well to complain about the injustice done. The next day, I went back to school and retold the story to any of my classmates who asked where I'd been. This not only turned many of them against the bullies who'd orchestrated the entire thing, but also allowed me to convince them to tell their parents to write letters to the board to complain about M's general behavior. The entire time I stayed away from the clique in class, and whenever a teacher noticed and pulled me aside to ask why I was actively avoiding those girls in particular, I told them that they had been bullying me and that M had them protected. I was a very good student and had a good relationship with many of my teachers, who I would sometimes keep company during lunch because I didn't have any friends to hang out with, so they believed me and made their own complaints. When M tried to confront me about them, I simply told her that I was just letting my teachers know what she had told us so that they couldn't accidentally make us work together. The whole thing caused such a mess for M that she was removed by the rest of the board as the interim principal a month after and lost her position as the board director shortly after that. I went on to my new high school feeling quite smug about that. And our last story. I parked in expectant mother parking at the grocery store. I have an autoimmune disease that limits my mobility. I have handicap plates on my car, and on bad days I have a walker to use as I have issues walking. Normally I have groceries delivered to my house, but we were expecting bad weather this weekend and wanted to pick up a few things while I was getting my medication refill. Because this medication is controlled, I have to show identification to pick it up, and they will not deliver it to me. I know in a few years I won't be as mobile as I am now, so I try to enjoy my independence and being able to do things for myself, which is why I don't ask my friends or parents to help me with errands unless I absolutely have to. When I got to the grocery store, all of the handicap spots were full. The only close parking spots were designated for expectant mothers and families with small children, so I did park there because the only other open spots were at the back of the lot, too far for me to walk safely even with my walker. As I was getting my walker out of the back seat, a woman and her husband pulled up, and the woman started shouting at me that I was not allowed to park there. It was reserved for pregnant women. I explained that I was disabled and all of the handicap spots were full, and she started yelling that she needed the spot because she was pregnant. The man who was with her told her to stop it and said he would drop her off at the door, and she yelled at him to shut up. I got my walker out of the back seat and made my way to the pharmacy, got a few treats for the weekend and word search book in case power went out. When I got back to my car, the police were there, and so was the woman and man from earlier. They called the police, and the woman had accused me of having fake handicap plates and lying about being disabled. The police officer asked to see my license and registration. I explained that I had an autoimmune disease that affects my mobility. I assume the police officer checked to see if the handicap plates were valid because he just handed my stuff back to me and told the woman that there was nothing he could do. He said that the spots were a courtesy of the store and they had no control over who parked in them, but did tell her that it should be okay for disabled people to use them when no handicap spots were available. The man who was with her was very upset and just kept apologizing and telling her to drop it, but she just kept shouting at me that I had no right to steal the spot away from her because she needed it more. I went home and was very upset. I did not think that I did anything wrong by parking there. My mother said that I should have just went home and went back out later. My friends think that I was fine to park there because all the handicap spots were taken. That poor husband. His life must be a living hell. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.